Hi, everyone. Welcome to another lecture on the composition of Earth. So, in our last session, we explored Earth's internal structure from crust to core. And today we're going to examine what our planet is actually made of. So, think about this. Every building, monument, and natural landscape you've ever seen is composed of minerals and rocks that tell a fascinating story about Earth's processes. The granite countertop in your kitchen, the limestone buildings on campus, the quartz in your watch, all of these connect to the grand story of our planet's composition. So let's dive into the building blocks of Earth and discover how they form, transform, and recycle in an endless dance that has been going on for billions of years. Okay, fantastic. So, what exactly is a mineral? So, we're going to break it down. A mineral is naturally formed, I should say, a naturally formed inorganic solid substance with an unvarying chemical composition and a characteristic crystal structure. So, for something to be considered a mineral, it must be solid, naturally found in nature, inorganic, possess a specific chemical composition, and contain atoms arranged in a regular pattern to form solid crystals. Scientists have identified about 4,400 minerals, with new types being discovered each year. But don't worry, you won't need to memorize all of them. Most rocks are formed from combinations of just a handful of common minerals. So we're going to go over these. So minerals are classified into 7 principal categories based on their chemical properties and internal structure. The first one we're going to talk about is silicates, the largest and most important group, composed of silicon and oxygen combined with other elements. And these make up about 95% of Earth's crust. So think of minerals like quartz, feldspar, and mica. Your smartphone screen likely contains silica. The second one is oxides, mineral composed of oxygen combined with other elements like hematite, iron oxide, which gives many red rocks their color. Number 3 is sulfides, minerals composed of sulfur combined with other elements. These include many important ore minerals like pyrite, often called fool's gold. Number 4 is sulfates, minerals composed of sulfur and oxygen combined with other elements, typically calcium. Number 5 is carbonates, minerals that are carbonate compounds of calcium or magnesium, like calcite and limestone. The White Cliffs of Dover in England are massive deposits of calcium carbonate. Number 6 is halides. These are salty minerals like halite, which is table salt. And number 7 are native elements, minerals that occur as discrete, uncombined elements like gold, silver, and copper. Okay, so in talking about rocks, while minerals are the building blocks, rocks are the assembled structure. Okay, a rock is a solid material composed of aggregate mineral particles in the lithosphere. We see exposed bedrock and we call it an outcrop. Okay, so for example, picture the minerals being individual Legos and the rocks are the Legos put together. Okay, just an example. So let's consider the 3 main types of rocks and how they form. The first one up is igneous rocks. So igneous rocks are when molten, now just a reminder, molten means melted under the surface of Earth. So igneous rocks are when molten material cools and solidifies. This molten material is called magma. Excuse me, molten just means that it's melted. Magma is when it is beneath the surface, and lava is when it erupts onto the surface. So again, molten means melted. Magma is below the surface. Lava is above the surface. Okay, so Igneous rocks, again, are formed when molten material cools and solidifies, okay? And again, when it's below the surface, it is magma, above lava. Okay, moving on. All right, we can classify igneous rocks based on their mineral composition and texture. One key factor is silica content, okay? So the first one up is felsic rock. This contains large portions of light-colored silicate materials like quartz and feldspar. Then we have mafic rocks. These are more dark-colored minerals like opaline and pyrrhotine. Fifth slide, next slide. So we also classify them by where they cool. Plutonic or intrusive rocks cool slowly beneath Earth's surface, allowing large crystals to form. Granite, with its visible marble, with its visible mineral grains, when we look closely at granite, this is a perfect example, and we can see bits of crystal in that. Volcanic or extrusive rocks cool rapidly on the surface, resulting in small crystals or even glass-like textures. Basalt, which makes up much of the ocean floor, is the most common extrusive rock. So think about making rock candy. If you cool sugar solution slowly, you get large crystals, but rapidly cooling produces smaller crystals. The same principle applies to igneous rocks. Okay, next up is sedimentary rock, and this I believe is the most easy to identify. Sedimentary rock forms through the accumulation and lithification of sediment. Sediment being small particles of rock debris or organic material deposited by water, wind, or ice. Now, the process involves first weathering of existing rocks. Then second, the transportation of that sediment, the weathered rocks. Third is the deposition in the layers called strata. And fourth is the lithification through compaction and cementation. So there's three main types, okay? So sedimentary rock, detrital or clastic sedimentary rock form from fragments of pre-existing rocks. For example, sandstone forms from sand grains. Shale forms from mud and clay. Conglomerate forms from rounded pebbles and cobbles. So next time you're at the beach, this is a great place to see it. Look at the sand. You're looking at potential future sandstone, okay? Now, chemical sedimentary rocks form when dissolved minerals precipitate from solution. Limestone that forms in caves and caverns through the dripping of water is a perfect example. Remember those stalactites and stalagmites. Those are chemical solutions, and we're going to study those also more in depth in a future chapter. Okay, so organic sedimentary rocks. These are from the remains of plants and animals. Coal is perhaps the most familiar example. It's formed from ancient swamp plants compressed over millions of years. That energy you get from coal is actually stored sunlight from millions of years ago. Fascinating, right? Sedimentary rocks are particularly important because they record Earth's history in their layers. They contain fossils that tell us about past life. They hold important resources like petroleum and natural gas. Okay, so the other types of rocks do not have this recorded history. The fossils that telling us about past life and natural gas and petroleum. Okay. All right. The next rock type is metamorphic rock. Okay, so the third rock type, um, the third major rock type forms through transformation. Metamorphic rocks, the word metamorphic means transformation. So metamorphic rocks start as either igneous or sedimentary rocks that are then changed dramatically by heat, pressure, or chemical fluids, all without actually melting. Okay. Okay, so this process occurs in two main settings. One, we have contact metamorphism. This happens when magma contacts surrounding rock, essentially cooking it. So imagine putting a hot pan against a plastic cutting board. That plastic would change where it contacts the heat. Then we also have regional metamorphism. This affects large volumes of rock subjected to the enormous heat and pressure found deep within mountain ranges or along tectonic plate boundaries. Metamorphic rocks are classified as the first one is foliated or non-foliated. Okay, so the foliated metamorphic rocks show alignment of minerals in parallel layers. The intensity of metamorphism creates a progression. Okay, so slate, which is low grade, think of roofing material. Schists, which is medium grade, think of visible mineral grains aligned in sheets. And gneiss, which is high grade with distinct light and dark bands. Then we have non-foliated metamorphic rocks. They lack this alignment, often because they were composed predominantly of a single material, non-foliated. Marble, which forms from limestone, is a classic example of non-foliated metamorphic rock. The beautiful marble of Michelangelo's David started as just humble limestone made of tiny marine organisms. Okay, so let's talk about the rock cycle. What makes Earth's geology so fascinating is that these three rock types are connected in a continuous recycling system called the rock cycle. Any rock type can transform into any other rock type under the right conditions. Igneous rocks can weather and erode to form sedimentary rocks. Sedimentary rocks can be buried, heated, and compressed to form metamorphic rocks. Metamorphic rocks can melt to form magma, which cools to form igneous rocks, and the cycle just continues. This cycle has been operating for billions of years, constantly recycling Earth's materials. The rocks beneath your feet right now might have been different rock types throughout Earth's history. Now, another important distinction is continental versus oceanic crust. The distribution of rock type varies significantly across Earth's surface. Sedimentary rocks dominate the continent's surface, but typically extend only about 2.4 kilometers deep on average. Below that, igneous and metamorphic rocks prevail. And this is important to remember. Continental crust and oceanic crust differ substantially in composition. Continental crust is primarily made of silica and aluminum. It has a density of about 2.7 grams per cubic centimeter. This is why continents essentially float higher on the mantle. Oceanic crust consists of primarily silica and magnesium. It's denser. It's about 3 grams per cubic centimeter. So it's heavier than the continental crust. And this is why ocean basins are lower than the continents. So essentially, the continental crust is lighter than the ocean crust. And this fact will come into play as we discuss the crust moving and plate boundaries. Now, an important concept is isostasy. And this the concept of isostasy is the maintenance of hydrocastic equilibrium on Earth's crust. Essentially, Earth's crust floats on the denser mantle below. So think of it like ice cubes in water. The cube with more mass above the water also extends deeper below. Similarly, when material is added to Earth's crust, like sediment or glacial ice, the crust actually sinks. When material is removed through erosion or ice melting, the crust rises. We can actually measure this happening today. The Hudson Bay region in Canada has rebounded more than 300 meters, that's about 1,000 feet, in the past 8,000 years after the massive ice sheets melted. And parts of Alaska are rising more than 36 millimeters, that's about 1.4 inches, annually as the glaciers recede. Okay, so this process explains why ancient shorelines can now be found high above sea level in places like Scandinavia. The land is still rising after being depressed by ice sheets during the last ice age. Fascinating, right? Okay. So, to wrap this up, Earth's composition reflects a dynamic planet constantly changing through various processes. From the smallest mineral crystal to the largest mountain range, the minerals of Earth tell us a story of our planet's history and ongoing evolution. In your surroundings, try to identify the rocks and minerals you encounter. The granite in a kitchen countertop, the limestone on campus buildings, the clay in pottery, all of these connect to the grand geological process that we've discussed here. So in our next lecture, we're going to explore how plate tectonics drive many of these processes, creating the larger features of Earth's surfaces like mountains, oceans, basins, and volcanoes. So I'll see you next time in the next video.